Today, we're talking about if the Washington Commanders should have made a trade at the NFL trade deadline. Next, we are going to be talking about the Washington Commanders' need to play smart and disciplined football down the stretch of this season. And so, before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and follow the channel as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football daily. And so, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the question around should the Washington Commanders have made a move at the trade deadline? And so for me personally, I think that the Washington Commanders should have did exactly what they did, which is not make a trade at the trade deadline. And I've got three reasons why I think that that was the right move. And so for me, the first one starts just with there's no deals that I think necessarily could turn this season around. And so I think that that's point number one as to why the Washington Commanders should not have made a trade at the trade deadline. I don't think that there's necessarily a home run trade that's going to kind of shift the direction of this season. And then next, I say no because I just don't feel like that there's a deal that's going to necessarily shift like the execution issues that we're seeing on both sides of the ball, because that seems to be an issue right now. It's just that this team is not taking care of business on offense when it comes down to finishing drives, holding on to the football and things like that. Like that, there's no trade that's necessarily going to fix that. And then defensively, yes, you could get a player in that's going to help you. But again, I think that you're still running into some issues that you have to play smart football. You have to execute a lot better. And so I don't think that there's necessarily a move that fixes that. And then, lastly, when it comes down to it, I think that the Commanders have very much not given up on this season, which is, great too, because, even though we've had the injuries at wide receiver, and just really across the football team, especially on defense, I think that this team is still very much locked in, and they still have a chance to turn some things around. And so I've talked about this before that they're right there in the NFC East. I know that the Eagles have 6 wins, but look, you can go ahead, you can pass up the Cowboys, and then also, too, you never know what's going to happen to the Philadelphia Eagles down the stretch here. I mean, anything could happen. You still have a lot of football left. And so I think that those are the 3 reasons why you don't see this team really make some moves at the trade deadline. And then also, too, I think another reason why this team is not making, any trades, or they didn't make any trades, at the trade deadline is based off of something that Dan Quinn said at his presser today. And so just really paraphrasing this, but he's asked about just the situation around, I believe, the trade deadline. And he says that, talking about just the phrase of win now, but develop for tomorrow. And so it sounds like that the Commanders are very much still they're on 2 timelines here. And so he talks about that you can be really in both buckets. And he says that you have to be thoughtful in how you kind of develop, players and things like that. And he talks about year 1 and 2 players, you're going to have these bumps and these kind of ups and downs with players versus your veteran players on the roster. But he does feel like that you can have both. You can develop players, and then also too, you can be going for the win now situation. And he said it just really depends kind of on your opponent and kind of where you go from there. And so, with that being said, and just going back to the trade deadline, I couldn't see necessarily the Commanders making a trade that's going to go ahead and move some of the draft capital, because that's very much going to be tied to your development and your future. And then also too, when you're talking about development, you have to think about okay, if you do bring a player in, is it worth maybe bringing that player in at this point in time in the season and kind of maybe getting in the way of your evaluation of your younger players? So you have to think about that. And I think that the Commanders just get to the bottom line here, which is that they have to execute a lot better. I think that that's really what it comes down to. I know the injuries have been there and everything else, but I think that, this team really has to give itself a chance by playing some smart football. And so that leads me now to the next point here in talking about some more stuff that Dan Quinn said in his presser today, really talking about playing smart and disciplined football. And so I thought that this was great because he's asked about actually Mikey Samra still and his ability to make plays and things like that. And he was talking about, yes, he definitely has the ability to make plays and things like that. But he's like, some of the issues that the Commanders have really faced this season is that, you just don't necessarily need to go, for some plays that you're going for, like, going for these risks throughout the games, just kind of making the plays that you need to make. And so that kind of goes into just really, again, you need to play the smart and disciplined football. And so, disciplined football is just going out there sometimes, not sometimes, like all the time, and just really doing your job. I mean, yes, if there is a play that you know that you can make, certainly go for it. Teams are going to beat you from time to time. I get all that, but you don't want to go out there, take unnecessary risks, and really, start to beat yourself, because that's where you start to get into the small margins of victory, really, in the NFL. And you just cannot afford to really do some stuff that's going to get you out of the way of the victory by, just making mistakes and stuff like that. And so that's some of the things that Dan Quinn was talking about with this team, is just getting out of your own way and playing some smart football. And then lastly, Dan Quinn does give us some updates here around some players. And so starting with Frankie Luvu. And so with Frankie Luvu, the one thing that he talks about with him is that he is not going to be suspended by the National Football League. I believe that he is still going to be fined due to the hip thrust tackles and things like that. And so Frankie Luvu will be available for the Lions game. And so that's some good news there. Next, as far as Jayden Daniels, it looks like that Jayden Daniels is not on the IR. And so with Jayden Daniels, they are looking to really see what the plan is going to be with him. He talked about, they're still doing their last minute kind of gathering here with the medical and just looking at the second opinions and things like that. And so really trying to figure out what the course of action is going to be with Jayden Daniels. And so, I think that if this team can really, kind of piece it together with Marcus Mariota out there, for these next couple weeks, and the team can really be in position, if Jayden Daniels is not going to be on the IR, then that would suggest that maybe we might see Jayden Daniels again this season. And so again, just going back to some of the things that I said a couple videos ago, I think that if you feel like that this season, is kind of getting away from you, then I don't think that you go out there and you play Jayden Daniels, even if he is available and wants to play. But, I can also see the case that if this team is able to be in position and he's able to recover from that dislocated elbow, there is, maybe the real possibility that Jayden Daniels can get back out there this season. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. If Jayden Daniels is cleared and he's ready to go later on in the season, and the Commanders are in position to possibly make a push for the playoffs, would you want to see him out there, or would you like to see the Commanders shut him down? Next, let me know what you guys are thinking about as far as just really, should the Commanders have made a move at the trade deadline? I said no, for three different reasons. Like I said, I just think that, point being, this team is still very much in it. They're still very much trying to win some games. And I think that, just really this news with Jayden Daniels not going to the IR, I think it kind of further pushes the point that the Commanders are still very much all in on this season. And they believe that, hey, they can turn some things around here just by playing some smart football and really executing on all three phases. We just haven't seen this team do that, really play complementary football across the board, even though this team has had the injuries. And so, again, the team is very much still trying to go ahead and just really figure some things out. And they're still very much trying to, I think, develop some players. And so one of the other things that Dan Quinn had mentioned is talking about guys like Jordan McGee and just how he's a great, tackler and everything else, and how he squares up and is able to go sideline to sideline. And so you are very much in this situation where you do want to win. You also want to develop some of your younger players and things like that. And so, I could see why the Commanders didn't make any moves here at the trade deadline. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And look, as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.